Welcome back to part two, looking at the collapse of the Soviet Union. In part one, we looked at developing nationalism within the republics of the Soviet Union. And we also looked at Boris Yeltsin, and he is going to play a significant role in the collapse of the Soviet Union and his involvement in Russian nationalism, or his building of his career based on Russian nationalism. So again, learning objectives, we continue our look at the events leading to the collapse of the Soviet Union. And as we do so, consider the reasons for the collapse, social, political, and economic. We've spoken about Gorbachev's policies from 85 when he comes in and the political changes that he makes. Now, we stopped at 89-90, which brings us to this period here, this 90-91, the last gasps of the Soviet Union, if you will. One of the things that I said previously is that Gorbachev was constantly moving from left to right because he was under pressure from both sides, from the more conservative elements in the government who needed him to slow down, and then also from the more reform-minded, more radical members of the government who wanted him to speed up the pace. And so the result is from 90 to 91, essentially after he had went and undermined his position and his power as general secretary with the political changes, is that now you see this oscillation, this movement back and forth between left, right. I'm so confused. Now remember, part of the political changes that Gorbachev had implemented was allowing for democracy within the Soviets. So people had a chance to elect to the Soviets the people that they chose, and they did not have to be Communist Party members. So we have a democratic Russia, and it's really important at this time to start thinking of Russia as being a separate entity from the Soviet Union. And this democratic Russia is formed of many organizations. Remember, as part of Glasnost and Perestroika, we have a developing pluralistic society. Now, Gorbachev is now pressured by the left, those wanting more liberalization, to change the constitution. And he changes the constitution in February 1990. One of the things that has changed is Article 6. Remember, when we talk about the Constitution here, we're talking about the Soviet Constitution implemented by Stalin in 1936, modified by Brezhnev, but still mostly the same thing. Article 6 said that the Communist Party was essentially the only party and was the driving force, the vanguard of the entire Soviet Union. So essentially, the Communist Party set the path for everybody. Now they are removed from that, and this again further undermines party. And it also allows for multi-party elections. So again, that pluralism that has developed within society is going to have representation within the government. He creates something called the Presidential Council, and this replaces the Politburo as the executive branch, again, undermining the role of the Communist Party. And Gorbachev becomes the president of this Presidential Council. So Gorbachev is the president of the Soviet Union. At the same time, Yeltsin is the head of Russia. So Yeltsin is the head of the Russian Soviet, and therefore Russia, and Gorbachev is the president of the Soviet Union. And now we have this set up for radical change with the 500 Days program. We spoke about this earlier when we looked at the economy. And an economic commission was set up to research ways to deal with the Soviet Union's massive economic issues. The idea was to shift the Soviet Union towards a market economy. But Gorbachev gets cold feet. That is, he pulls away from the extreme, the radicalness of this 500 Days program. from his position on the left, where he went about liberalizing the political and economic systems of the Soviet Union under pressure from the conservative elements, Gorbachev is now going to move to the right. In November, he comes out against the 500 Days program. So this program, which was supposed to liberalize the economy by moving completely to a market-based economy, he comes out against it, and whatever is developed is really, really diluted. Now, he also appoints the former a hardline KGB chief as the interior minister. The interior minister is the dude who looks at what's happening within the country. And this guy is old school, so somebody who is conservative. And then, as we've spoken about previously, that growing nationalism, the Baltic states was kind of really where it was at. Now, Gorbachev's position had been undermined by his best friend, Stabby McStabby Yeltsin, and who had signed a document with Lithuania recognizing Lithuania's sovereignty. So again, keep in mind that we have this double thing happening where Russia under Yeltsin, and then Gorbachev is still trying to keep the whole Soviet Union thing together. Now, Lithuania is like, whoop, whoop, we be free, yo! And Latvia's following behind, and they declare themselves independent of the Soviet Union. The Lithuanian Supreme Soviet, which the members were elected under this liberalized policy of free elections, voted to secede from the Soviet Union. The other Baltic states are like, yeah, when you annexed us in 1940, that was all kinds of not legal. We are free. But, you know, in like Latvian and Estonian and stuff. And Gorbachev sends tanks. He sends the special forces to suppress this independence. And there are a few deaths in there. And this, of course, is now, we have protests in the Baltic republics and within Moscow. So Yeltsin had been fomenting the nationalism within Russia, and he also was supporting the Baltic states from their secession of the Soviet Union. And so you have a lot of people saying, oh, heck no. Okay, Gorbachev shifted to the left. People are like, ah! He shifted to the right. Other people are like, ah! Now he moves to the middle. After the protests in the Baltic states, Gorbachev is scrambling, and he tries to defuse the situation to still preserve the Soviet Union. He's trying to keep the Union together. And what he does is he advocates for renegotiated union instead of something that is really centralized and that the decision making is based in Moscow. He tries to negotiate for a more federal system. So to loosen the union, make it more federalized, in which you still have like trade and a lot of the similar political decision making, but the republics have more self-rule. So they have a greater ability through their Soviets to make decisions that are designed to meet the needs of their population. Now, a great number of these countries reject it. And Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Moldavia, Georgia, and Armenia, they don't want to participate in this renegotiating the union, and they reject it. These guys are all moving towards complete independence anyway. However, some do negotiate. The 9 others do negotiate, and the new Union Treaty was approved in July 1991. The ones who were renegotiating, they saw benefit to themselves, and they were really in favor of keeping a federal system. It was kind of like they got the best of both worlds, right? The ability to meet their own needs, as well as the benefits that come to being part of a larger organization. And these 9 are to sign on August 20th. But maybe you know, maybe you don't. Oh, it does not happen. Which brings us to the next bit, talking about the coup of 1991. Basically, 2 days before this new union was supposed to be signed, there is an attempted coup of the hardliners on the right. They are not happy with this loosening of the Soviet Union and this renegotiation with the republics. And they try to take over the state, get rid of Gorbachev. Now, it is the conservative members of the Communist Party who try to stage this coup, and it's the current KGB chief, the former KGB chief, now Interior Minister, and the Defense Minister. These are all guys from their positions. You can see why they think the way that they do, and they also feel that there's a lot to lose. Basically, what they tried to do was to pressure Gorbachev to support and cancel this new union treaty. Gorbachev refuses and is placed under house arrest. The conspirators, what they do is they cut off his telephone access, and they declare a state of emergency. And because it's a state of emergency, things are going to fall into their hands. Ultimately, though, this coup fails, and it fails for a number of reasons. One, it is poorly organized. They did it while Gorbachev was on holiday. It seemed like, they were just like, dude, my gosh, I had an awesome idea. Let's totally stage a coup, right now. And they did, but in Russian. And in poorly planning it, they failed to arrest Yeltsin. And that means that he is all kinds of loose to stir up trouble. And he does. There is very little support for these guys. There's very little popular support, and ultimately not enough support within the party either. Now, Yeltsin is out there. He basically gets on the radio. This is also part of the poorly organization. They failed to take control of the media. So Yeltsin is out there. He's able to get control of the radio. He's able to actually get people to get involved. Now, the conspirators surround the parliament building with tanks, and what Yeltsin does, he gets all the Muscovites on fire, and he leads demonstrations. For example, that picture that was the opening slide to this discussion, people are putting roses and flowers in the tanks, and huge amounts of people take to the streets to show that there's very little support for this. Additionally, the armed forces refuse to back the conspirators. Even though it is one of the defense ministers involved, the actual military itself does not want to be involved in this. And basically, if you're going to have a coup, you need to have the guns on your side. And they didn't. The coup collapses after 3 days. Basically, these guys realize that they do not have a snowball's chance of winning, and so they run away after 3 days. Yeah. Here we have another image of the tanks as they're trying to take over. And this attempted coup basically spells the end of the Soviet Union, which later that year ceases to exist. Gorbachev's position is undermined by the participation of the Communist Party members in this coup. That they did so is an indicator to the whole world and the other states in the Soviet Union that the Communist Party essentially has no faith in his leadership. So now he himself is in a position of vulnerability. Boris Yeltsin has gained in popularity. He was the face of this popular uprising against this coup. And essentially, he was the face of protecting Russia from these cray-cray people trying to bring back authoritarianism. And so he completely gains in popularity. And he's able to parlay this. He parlays it into, one, a position of strength in order to become sort of to remain as the leader of Russia. And he's also able to try to force Gorbachev into making these concessions. Gorbachev has to recognize that the Russian government, headed by Yeltsin, is equal to the Soviet one. So it is no longer the Soviet government making decisions for all. The Russian would have to be considered. Boris Yeltsin takes this as an opportunity to humiliate Gorbachev because it's payback time. And Gorbachev resigns a few days later on August 24th as the General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, but he is still the president of the Soviet Union. Now, Yeltsin is going to then work to dismantle the Soviet Union itself as well as the Communist Party. And he does this in September. The CPD, that is the Congress of People's Deputies of the Soviet Union, is dissolved. In November, Yeltsin bans the Communist Party from Russia. So how can the Communist Party be leading the Soviets, all of these republics, when it cannot participate or cannot exist within the largest republic of the Soviet Union? Now, most of the republics are going to declare their independence. They are very, very afraid. Even the ones that had been willing to be part of this federation, who had been enthusiastic about being part of the federation, they start declaring their independence. It is rats fleeing a sinking ship. These guys are really afraid that Yeltsin is going to take this opportunity to dominate them. If they stay within this union, they feel like Russia is going to suck all of the resources out of them for the benefit of Russia and to the detriment of the rest. So they declare independence. In December 1991, Russia, the Ukraine, and Belarus formed the Commonwealth of Independent States. Basically, what you have by this point in time, Yeltsin is straight up saying that they are independent and they can enter into political organization without the say-so of the Soviet Union. Eventually, 8 more of the republics signed to join in the Commonwealth of Independent States. And December 25th, 1991, the Soviet Union is ended. Gorbachev resigns as the president of the Soviet Union, and this is the formal end. Here we have a handy-dandy map of the Commonwealth of Independent States. What you should do is compare it to the map of the Soviet Union to see who didn't join back up and consider why. Now realize that the CIS is a very, very loose organization. One of the most important characteristics, or one of the founding principles, is that each state is independent and sovereign. So going completely against what was the ethos of the Soviet Union. Here we have protests within Moscow. Obviously people are not down, and this is what we wound up with. So I'm just waiting for the bus because my car got towed.